We drove out this morning to Hog Island Oyster Farm in the beautiful Tomales Bay. We're going to meet John, one of the co-owners of Hog Island, and pick up a few dozen oysters, head back to the farm, enjoy some raw, grill some up, and open a bottle of our 2020 Rosé.
People started really farming oysters here in Tomales Bay in 1873, which is when the Transcontinental Railroad got done. They brought small East Coast oysters out and put them into San Francisco Bay and this bay and started growing them up to market size. And then in the 1920s, somebody introduced the Pacific oyster from Japan, and that is what we all grow on the West Coast. And that's what our Hog Island Sweetwater is a nice Pacific oyster. So that was sort of the start of what you see today out here. I've got you 2 dozen extra smalls, or your Hog Island Sweetwaters here in the bag. This is the dozen of what we call our Earthquake Bays, that tumbled oyster, and then a dozen of the bigger oysters for the barbecue.
Perfect.
All right?
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, we've made it back to the farm with our beautiful oysters from Hog Island. So now we're going to do a little prep for the oysters. We're going to make a verjus mignonette to spoon on the raw oysters, and then a little bit of a chili butter to spoon on the grilled oysters. So to make the verjus mignonette, we're going to dice 1 shallot really finely and then pour over some verjus. And now we can start prepping our chili butter. So for that, I have 2 sticks of butter that have softened, and I'm going to add a few spoonfuls of Calabrian chili to this. We'll add a generous pinch of salt. My butter's unsalted. And then a few good cracks of black pepper. I'm going to microplane a half a clove of garlic. And then we'll zest up 1 of these lemons. Okay, so this is for the grilled oysters. So we're gonna shuck the oysters and leave them on the half shell and spoon some of this butter onto that, and so it'll kind of melt into the oyster as it's cooking. And we're gonna top it with some breadcrumbs that I have toasted off here after it's grilled with a little bit of chopped fennel. Okay, so now we can start shucking our oysters. So I'm gonna set this on the towel on my cutting board and kind of fold it over the top part and use that for support. And then there's this little point, this little joint here at the point, and that's right where we're gonna put our knife in. So once you have that in there, you're not really using much force, you're just kind of wiggling around and pushing up and down also with your oyster knife until you feel a release. I'm kind of twisting it, kind of doing all the movements, and it just easily popped open. We're gonna slide our knife along the top of the shell here to release a muscle. There's a muscle holding onto the shell right there. At this point, I like to wipe the knife again just to make sure you're not getting any more shell in there, and kind of clean it up if you see anything loose. And now we're gonna go through and release the bottom muscle. Now I'm going to spoon a little bit of our mignonette on and give it a taste. There we go. So good. They're so briny right now. Yum. That's delicious. The verjus gives a nice like acidity and tartness with mild fruity flavor. So now we can do our grilled oysters. So we are going to use a bigger oyster for this because when you grill them, when they cook, they shrink up a bit. So we can shuck these. We're going to shuck them before we grill them. And then we can spoon a little dollop of the chili butter on here. And now we can just throw these just right on the grill, and they'll probably cook for about 4 or 5 minutes. The juice in there will all boil up and get bubbly, and the butter will melt, and you'll start to smell like garlic and the lemon and the chili. So our oysters have been grilling for 5 to 6 minutes, and the liquid in there is all bubbly, the butter is all melted, and the oysters are now opaque, so they've been fully cooked. So now we can pull them off and top them with the breadcrumbs. You want to use tongs for this because the oyster shell will be very hot. So move them as gingerly as you can to not lose any of that delicious liquid and butter. So now we can top these with our fennel breadcrumbs. Okay, let's taste it. It smells amazing. So good. So decadent and buttery and a little bit of heat, a little bit of crunch. That lemon.